Welcome back to Radio Entrepreneurs. I'm Jonathan Freedman, and our next guest, both of which are from Sapers and Wallack. We have Pat Casserly, Vice President of Corporate Retirement Plans, and Evan Macedo, my guest host for today, VP of Finance and Operations from Sapers and Wallack. Welcome, guys. Welcome to Radio Entrepreneurs.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Jonathan. It's a pleasure being here.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Always a pleasure. Do you want to just give us a little bit of a high-level overview? I know Sapers and Wallack does all types of things, retirement planning, benefits, etc. But you want to give us an overview of what the firm does and services that you guys provide?
Sure. I'll just start. So since 1932, we've been servicing both business owners and high net worth individuals, helping solve their complex problems with their executive benefits, their retirement plan advisory, their insurance, and their financial planning strategies. It is always our goal to provide peace of mind, financial clarity, and when we can, help people retire in style. But I'm going to pass it over to Pat over here because he is the head of our corporate retirement advisory practice. He just started here a couple of months ago, and he has been doing a tremendous job helping out our clients. So, Pat, do you want to take 2 seconds to talk about your focus at the company?
Yeah, sure thing, Evan. Again, Jonathan, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you hosting. Yeah, so my role at Sapers and Wallack, I really kind of think about it in two different buckets. So the first bucket is really to make sure that our current clients really have everything that they need to service their 401k, to really make sure that they're checking all the fiduciary boxes throughout the year, to make sure that their employees are supported if they have any kind of questions about investments, questions about any kind of distribution planning if they're thinking about retiring. So really giving everything our current clients need to kind of operate the 401k and making sure they're staying within the bounds of kind of what's fiduciary like requirements, like what they're appropriate for them to be doing. The other side of it is making sure that I'm kind of growing the current retirement business. So a big part of my focus is making sure that I'm bringing in new corporate clients into Sapers and Wallack, but not just for the retirement plans as well, but also making sure we can service those clients, elsewhere in other parts of our business, whether it's insurance, whether it's estate planning, whether it's executive benefits, to really make sure our clients have everything that they need, not just kind of the right retirement plan, if you will.
So I know that, obviously Sapers and Wallack as an institution has been around for a long time, certainly seen cycles. I'm going to go to the timely and topical. I'm probably on the top of everybody's mind. We're seeing a lot of turbulence in the markets. Is your phone and email off the hook 24/7 these days? How do you guys approach something like that? I know every dip that we take is followed or prefaced by unprecedented, but markets are often turbulent. Investing, and I'm sure your line is, we're in it for the long haul. You've got to take a long view on things. But are you guys seeing a tremendous uptick in terms of questions that people are asking? Fear, panic, uncertainty, anxiety, all of the above?
Yeah, all the above, so, 2024 and 2023 were really great years in the market. So we didn't get a ton of questions. Our committee meetings were focused more on fiduciary needs, focused more on operations, kind of the needs of the individual participants in the plan. But when markets are kind of down, people want to focus on investments, right? So I'm getting questions from our corporate clients, the CEOs, the HR directors, the CFOs that I talk to every single day. They're looking for some understanding about what's going on in the markets. Furthermore, the individual participants that we work with on an everyday basis, they're the ones that are seeing their account balances take a hit, especially over these last few days. But certainly since the beginning of the year, it's been kind of a bumpy ride. So what I say is we get a lot more questions and we get a lot more meetings in terms of what our thought is with respect to the markets. And I'll say the advice that we give to a 25-year-old, just starting off in her career is very different than someone who might be 60 years old who's thinking about, retiring over the next 5 to 10 years. So I'd say right now this year, uncertainty is very, very high. So this is really where we can show our value talking to, like I said, either a 25-year-old or a 55-year-old or a 60-year-old, because those folks are going to have different needs, and just make sure they understand kind of what they should be thinking about, when markets are kind of turbulent like they are today.
And to piggyback off of what Pat just said, for our wealth management practice, we're putting out articles where we're in the midst of putting up a webinar on this, so that way we can have a really proactive and timely conversation within the next week or so. And for our wealth management clients as well, everybody that comes through our office, they get a financial plan. And the financial plan takes into consideration dips in the market crashes, market corrections. So, when there is panic, it's really easy to go back and point to, hey, we built your financial plan. We took this into consideration. There is nothing to worry about. We've been managing your investments with this in mind all the time. So, that's really giving people, the financial clarity and the peace of mind to sleep well at night that we're handling everything to the best that we can.
So, really interesting. You guys take both a holistic approach when you talk about your wealth management clients, sort of individualized, but when you're talking about retirement plans, again, you've got that corporate focus, but you also have the focus on the individual participants within the plan. So that must be a challenge to balance out those two elements, talking about, individual participants and the questions that they may have. And to your point, Pat, 25-year-olds horizon very different than a 60-year-old's. How does one begin to sort of, do you deconstruct and look at it in the individual circumstances and provide guidance in terms of that? Or how are you guys, positioned to be able to help your clients with that?
Yeah, well, I'll say, the average 401k, or 403b participant that I talk to, for the most part, they're just happy to talk about their retirement and it's more of a long-term focus. Something that's 10 or 15 or 20 years away. Those folks are nervous today because they're a little uncertain, but they've got some time to go before they really have to worry about, what's happening to their retirement accounts. There's other folks that have some more assets today, they're trying to invest more for the short term. So really it's taking that holistic approach because some of the retirement assets that these folks have, they're going to look different. The investments that we're investing for 15, 20 or 30 years are going to look different than what we're investing for you over the next 6 months, over the next 1 year, over the next 3 years. So, we take a look at our client's entire portfolio. We talk about what the retirement assets are and what that risk profile should look like versus more of the recent or more near-term investments and how that should be different. So like we said, you do a holistic approach. And then if we need to have a discussion about, whether we should transfer some of those assets into an annuity or some type of insurance product based on what's been going on with some of this market turbulence, we're having those conversations every day.
So one of the things that I think a lot of people lose sight of, and is maybe difficult for the average individual as an investor, is to really understand the back end fees and back end costs. And I think most people sort of put it out of their mind. If it's not a check that I have to write, it's not really important. I know you guys look at sort of the whole picture and say, okay, what is this costing? Are we seeing a lot of change in the industry in terms of how fee structures are determined and how they're working? And how do you help your clients through that?
Sure. Well, the retirement side of things is really kind of two fees to think about. There's, the platforming fees. Let's say, for example, we've got a client that has a Fidelity 401k. What is Fidelity charging to access that platform and what does that cost? And on the other side of it is where are you investing your money in the markets? What mutual funds or ETFs are we putting you in? And then what is the cost for that? And I would say for both, you're seeing just a race to zero. When it comes to fees, you're seeing record keeping fees going down. You're certainly seeing investment fees going down. I mean, right now, Fidelity offers a couple different funds that are free, completely free to invest in. So the race to zero is happening right now. So I would say the most important thing to have is an advisor that can help you kind of navigate what those fees look like. The average, plan sponsor that I talked to today, if they're looking at their fees, it's kind of hard to decipher how much they're paying for these different services that the Fidelities and the Empowers and the Voyas offer. So some of my job is to make sure our clients understand those fees, but also to make sure that I'm taking those clients to market to make sure that even though there's a race to zero, that I'm getting them the best deal possible today. And obviously very few plan sponsors can take a look at a fee disclosure and really understand what they're paying at the end of the day. So that's my job, to make sure they understand that and make sure they're getting the best deal.
No, it's fascinating because, I think people look at it and see a fraction of a percent and say, oh, that doesn't amount to something, to anything. And then you look at it over the course of a lifetime or, of retirement planning. And you could be talking for an individual about significant fees, but also for a plan sponsor, significant fees.
And
yeah,
I'll
right. It does add up over. It does add up over one's career. And then sometimes, you're looking at these fees, you're like, well, these don't seem so bad, but how do you know unless you compare it to a benchmark or to an RFP to the market? And that's something that we do to make sure our clients understand that their fees are what they are today, but also what they relate to in the market.
Fantastic. Evan, did you have something you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I'd also say too, one thing that's different about our practice is for our retirement planning clients, we do a fee benchmarking study every 3 years. Plans grow. Sometimes plans shrink as well, but not everybody is looking at repricing the investments or the record keepers for your retirement plans. It's very important to do that. If you have $5 million in a plan and 3, 4, 5 years later, you now have 10, 12 million, you should get access to investments at a cheaper share class and a cheaper cost. So we're very proactive on that to make sure our clients are paying, what is the right fee in the marketplace for them.
Yeah, just to take that a little bit further there, Evan, when we have clients that, maybe we start off with a client that has $3 or $4 million plan with 20, 25 employees, Well, in 4 or 5 years, maybe they've got 100 employees, and maybe the plan that we set up for them 2 or 3 years ago isn't quite optimal right now because of the changes that have happened with the company, right? So one of my job is to make sure that we're always assessing the retirement plan to make sure as the company changes, that we also make sure the retirement plan changes along with it.
Fantastic. In a competitive environment, the numbers are always shifting, things are always moving, and it sounds like you guys take a wonderfully proactive approach towards ensuring that your clients are in the right place. If people want to reach out to you, either Pat or Evan, if they want to engage with you, find out a little bit more about Sapers and Wallack and how you guys work, what's the best way for them to do that?
So that's really easy, Jonathan. If you go to our website, sapers-wallack.com, you can click on the Our Team page. You'll see myself, you'll see Pat, and all the rest of our wonderful advisors. You can get our contact information, email us, call us from there, and we would love to speak with you.
Fantastic. My guest host has been Evan Macedo, Vice President of Finance and Operations at Sapers and Wallack, and Pat Casserly, Vice President, Corporate Retirement Plans at Sapers and Wallack. It's been a pleasure having both of you on Radio Entrepreneurs.
Pleasure
Thank you,
to be
Jonathan.
here.
Appreciate it.
And we'll be right back with another segment on Radio Entrepreneurs.